Hello, hello, Vivian Davis here. Welcome to the minute or so countdown pre-show. I'll be doing this tutorial here momentarily. And I hope to have a couple people come in live today. I have a little bit of light jazz playing in the background. Very quiet, you guys probably can't hear it. But I learned that a little louder and then I get distracted, so. Just a little something. You can light a candle. This is your relaxation time. I actually had one lit last week, or a couple times, but didn't do it today. All right, it's about 2 o'clock, and it is a lovely Monday morning in Norfolk, Virginia, where I recently relocated a few months back, and I'm happy to be here. I think we have a high of in the low to mid 60s today, and it'll be even nicer in the next couple days. I am going to tell you a little bit about myself, and then you see a big mess in front of you, which I'm going to go over here in just a moment. So again, for those of you that just signed on, my name is Vivian Davis. My business is Tutoring Art. I previously was running multiple programs up in Maryland, in Carroll County, where I taught classes as well as had some other artists that worked with me. And then about 7, I think probably 8 months now, I relocated to Virginia, to the coast. We are on the bay, the Chesapeake Bay, my husband's love and life, and we're really happy to be here. But I'm trying to grow a following. I had a little bit of one up in Maryland, and I did some work with the Carroll Arts Center, which were very, very helpful in kind of plugging my business. And I did, like I said, a lot of classes. And so in Norfolk, I just became a resident artist at the beginning of the year at the Arts Center, which is in downtown Norfolk. And I had started teaching some classes there, but now we are at a social distance, and so I decided it would be kind of fun to do some Facebook Live tutorials, which I had never done before. So I'm a little bit of a novice, but I think they're getting better as we go. And this one is going to be on watercolor botanicals, as I call the class typically, but we're actually painting with watercolor pencils, and we are doing botanical illustrations of tulips. I'm going to show you some of these. This is the one that we're working on today. Just the style, not necessarily the colors. You'll have some color options. On my Facebook page, Tutoring Art, if you are signed in right now and looking at this live tutorial, if you dual screen and can go to the discussion page or come back to the video, the discussion page has not only I guess you would call kind of a stencil for this. I went ahead and just did an outline. For those of you that don't want to draw or don't know how to draw, I'm not doing a drawing lesson for that. Drawing lesson for this one. I'm just going to start in with the color and show you how to use these pencils. So if you haven't done this already, you can go ahead and draw a sketch for yourself while I'm talking, or you're welcome to take a moment and print this out. Print it out. I used transfer paper, which is kind of like a carbon paper, only better. Has graphite on one side. And I just print out, actually, let's see, this was a copy of my painting. And then I just used the outline to do this. And so for you guys, I simplified it and just took a picture of this. So you'll be able to print that out on 8.5 by 11 paper. And it should be about the size, if you want to test it, it should be able to fit in an 8 by 10 space, for which I am using cardstock today of watercolor paper. It is a greeting card, essentially, is what that is. And I had a pack of those. Show you this. And so I like to, for my classes, typically will order these and provide the materials, and we use those so that in the end you have a card that folds. And this is a nice idea after you finish your painting today. Even if you don't finish it while we're doing the tutorial, you can finish it thereafter. You could go to Vistaprint, take a photo of this, go to Vistaprint, and create yourself some cards. So just a thought. Okay, so this is the one we're working on today. I've done several because I've done this a few times, and just to create variety. These are actually my favorite tulips, but I don't love my little botanical illustration here as much. I just, so this is the one that I typically will do on its own. And it's a little bit easier even than the one for today, only because we're using mostly solid color, each color tulip. But the one today is kind of fun because of the variety. It's a parrot tulip. There are different colors on photo references that I also pasted. I'm having problems speaking today. That I posted also on the discussion part of the event for this. And you can discover those if you want to go ahead, if you're on a computer, and again, dual screen, just open up a new window and go in there and grab one of those and put it on your computer. Or if you have a moment and you want to print it as well, that way you'll have your color references. You can also just follow along with me. You don't have to use the photo reference, but I gave the artists that do this regularly, they love to paint, they want to follow along with me, but they're going to want to create their own. And so that same parrot tulip variety has some choices for color. And the one that I may even demonstrate today is the rainbow one. So it'll be kind of fun. Okay, so there's this one. And then this one that I created as well is also a little more simple, but that'll give you some color choice there if you just kind of want to go with something different. And so I'll just kind of go through these. They're on my page if you want to take a look. I tend to try out different colors. This is actually one I did for the holidays of the poinsettia. And so I kind of had fun and just kind of filled it in with another color another time when I was doing it. This is a similar variety of what we're doing today, but there are more tulips involved. And this one's just kind of purple tones, but those are pretty if you want to go with the purple today. And then you'll see I've just kind of never really finished these, but did a little practicing. This is the same one, but just, started it and didn't finish it. I'm not even sure when I used that. And so you'll see that. And then these I also added some micron pen too. So you kind of see there's lines in there. I was just trying different styles so that I could, potentially use these cards to send out at some point. Okay, so I'm going to put these off to the side. If you want to get your paper ready, if you just have watercolor paper, I have some Canson watercolor paper that I use typically for classes, and it's fairly inexpensive. You can buy it at Walmart. You can buy it at Michael's, and I'd probably advise Michael's over Walmart these days because Walmart's very packed and we are supposed to be keeping a distance. And it'll be interesting if people watch this video a couple years from now, they're going to go, oh, what is she talking about? Oh yeah. They'll realize that we went through this crazy time, and we will have exited this crazy time, which something I'm looking forward to, as well as I'm sure most of you are as well. So if you're working with regular watercolor, if you don't have watercolor pencils and you want to work with regular watercolor, you're going to want to make sure you have one of these little palettes to put that has the wells, so that you can put some color in there as you're working. And then for us as well today, we're going to need a water cup. I'm using this old reusable cup that probably had soup or yogurt in it. And you're going to need some paper towel. Any paper towel is fine. I prefer Viva, but nowadays it's hard to find paper towels, so I don't even know what I'm using, something generic right now. And then some watercolor or some pencils. I use synthetic brushes for when I do watercolor, and these are my favorite. They actually came with some water soluble graphite pencils. and they have a nice point, so I can use it for, I'm out of the viewpoint there. I can use it for, doing small sections, as well as I can kind of spread out some color with it. And then if you want to do any kind of background, you're going to want a flat brush potentially. And then I have a couple more detailed brushes when I want to go in and do some of the lines, especially on the roots of the tulip bulb. You're going to need a nice thin brush for that. Okay, so those are my brushes. Feel free to use your own, obviously, in any one of these styles, and they should work just fine for you. Okay, so the other thing, and one of the most important things we need now, and I'm going to have that in the screen so you guys can see. I'm going to actually move these to just so they don't distract you too much, but I'll probably leave the purple one up so I can find it here, since that's another color variety you could use, and that'll give you an idea. Okay, so I'm going to leave that one there, and then this is the one that we're going by. And then if you pull up a photo reference, if you want to try something different, feel free. The other thing I want you to have, and the most important thing, actually, is the pencils. So we're going to go over the colored pencils here in just a moment. And then an extra piece of paper to test out your colors, because I'm going to walk you through that right now. The most important aspect of painting is knowing what colors you're using, unless you're kind of free painting and it doesn't really matter. So I want to test out different colors. I may end up using all these pencils, and maybe I end up using 5 of these pencils. I don't know yet. We'll see. But I'm going to test them, so I want you to do the same thing. So if you have a grouping of watercolor pencils, I have a giant pack of them. I've bought a bunch over the years because I teach classes, and I just keep them in a big baggy gallon bag. So there are multiple colors in there. A lot of them are also repetitive because I share them with my class. So right now I think I have, let's see, I have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26 pencils picked out. See if I can move them into the screen a little bit so you guys can see my little color palette there. And I have colors ranging from, I've got 3 different pinks. I've got, actually that's out of place. Oh no, wait, is this magenta? It is magenta, so technically it qualifies as a pink. I've got a red. I've got a couple of greens. I'll mention what the color names are here in just a moment. Some lighter greens to lighten up my leaves and such. I've got kind of a aqua blue that for some reason I used in a couple of my illustrations. I love that color. I might not use it in this one, I don't know yet. I've got different oranges. This is a deep, actually vermilion, so it's kind of a red orange. And then I've got some different color oranges. I've got some yellows. I've got some blues. I've got some, see, that's misplaced. That's green. Let's put that with other greens. I've got purple, couple purples. I have, actually, is that a brown? Yeah. I have 3 different browns, and then I have a black. And I don't know that I'll use the black, maybe a tiny bit, but probably not for this. So that's my huge color palette, which is too much. So I want to kind of narrow it down. So if you have watercolor pencils, I suspect you've already picked out a few. Go ahead and go through them and pick out some colors that you want to use. And I'm going to tell you specifically the ones that we have here in front of me, so that it gives you an idea and you can kind of look through yours. So I see a couple people have signed in. That's awesome. So Dana Lawhorn is signed in, and she said she printed and traced the back on a well-lit window, then flipped over onto the watercolor paper and rubbed the front picture to transfer. So that's another way you can do it if you don't have the graphite paper. The old-fashioned way, I guess, when you were a child, is you would take a piece of paper and you would take a pencil, for which I have around here somewhere, and you would kind of rub the back of the illustration with the pencil really, really, really well, and then you would flip it over and you'd set it down on what you're going to work on, and you would just trace the outline, and that would do the same thing. So if you didn't do that already and you weren't sure what to do, that's a great idea. Thank you, Dana. All right, so we're going to try out these colors. We're going to go ahead and test them one at a time. I'm actually looking for my video here on my page, so I'm giving you guys a moment to get your pencils out and ready to go. I like to watch live so I can see what's on the screen. I'm using my phone to actually do the filming. Okay, good. Here we go. So now I can see. That way I know if you guys are seeing what I'm doing. All right, so I'm going to start on the pink side. So I have 3 pinks. The first one that I have, let me move my pencils over so I make sure that I'm where you can see me. Okay, so the first pink I have is a magenta. It's a very light magenta. So I'm just going to just put a little bit here, and then I'm going to move it over. So I'm doing it in the order of where I have them. This one is a dark pink, although it's funny, that one looks lighter than the other one. All right, the third one that I have is called Carmine, but it's an interesting color. Okay, and then I have a magenta. This is a different magenta, which looks more purple, doesn't it? That's why it's a good thing to test your colors. Just because it says something doesn't necessarily mean it's going to look like what someone else has. Then I've got a crimson red, which is really red, so that might be useful today. Okay, so next I have olive. So I'm going to skip from my reds. I'm going to just leave a little bit of space. And now I'm going to do my olive, which is a really good color for when we do the greenery in there. I have a dark green, probably too dark for today. And then I have an other, wait, did I get the same one? That's another olive green. But look how different it is. So I can probably use these 2 olive greens and maybe even mix them with the dark green if I want to get them darker. So I'm going to keep that. I like that. Then if I want to get a little brighter, I have a yellow green, which I definitely used in here because I like to use bright colors. I'm not much of a realist. I like to enhance color on most of the work that I do. And that's my favorite thing. And let's see. Oh, what did I tell you what this one was? This is says true green. Go figure, too green. All right, then we have a light green, which, doesn't it look like an aqua blue? That's crazy. That's why you gotta try these out. That's definitely an aqua blue. Look at that. That's blue. That'd be beautiful for a nice crystal blue lake like you would see in the Montana, let's see, where were we? Glacier National Park, Banff up in Canada, or for like the Caribbean. Okay, so let's try this deep vermilion. So I'm changing from the blue greens now. I'm going to go to the oranges. So we have, that's a nice deep orange. I like that. So I'm definitely going to be using some of that. And then I have, good question. Wonder if this is even a watercolor pencil. It has nothing on it. Better scoot that over. Never mind. Okay, they get mixed up sometimes. This one is definitely watercolor, and this one, interestingly enough, does not tell me the color, but it's kind of a light orange. These are the very thin pencils. I don't know, but it's definitely watercolor. And then we have a sunburst yellow. That's a pretty color. I'm definitely going to be using that one. And then I have a lemon cadmium. And I have a deep cadmium. See the difference in there? Yeah, nice difference. So that's good. Okay. Now I'm going to go to the this is ultramarine. And I wanted a deep blue in case I do the rainbow one. We'll see. I may stick to the original color. If you're on this and you have a preference, please comment and let me know. I haven't decided yet otherwise. This is a Spectrum Blue. And some of these are Derwent watercolor pencils, and some of these are Faber-Castell. So that's partially why you're gonna see a difference in some of the colors. This one is Prismacolor. I have a lot of different ones that I've bought over the years, and so I just kind of mixed them all together. But again, the importance of testing them. This is a True Blue. You can kind of see that, True Blue. Like that. Okay. And then I've got there's another one that doesn't have, but I know these are watercolor. I'm almost 100% sure. We'll give it a try here because I like this color. The light purple. And then I have a dark violet. That's definitely a dark purple. And then we're gonna switch to the browns. And then I have a black, which everyone knows what black looks like. Okay, so we have, this was another one that doesn't have the color on it, but it's kind of a dark brown. Yeah, it's dark. And we're definitely gonna need a dark brown. And a raw umber, which is a little bit lighter. And we have a medium brown. Let's see if that one's really different. Not much. Not much. I'm gonna show these close up here in just a moment. And then of course, black. Okay, so I'm gonna put that in the screen a little closer. It looks like one of those tests you do for your printer, color tests. So you can kind of see all those different colors. Now I'm not gonna use all of these. So now I'm gonna kind of decide as I go through this, I'm gonna water these down to determine their true color, and then I'll decide which ones I'm gonna use. So you can use a small brush, something with a little bit of a point, so we don't blend this across to each color, because we're not blending these. And then I'm gonna go ahead and wet my brush just a little bit, not too wet, kind of wipe it on the side of your cup, and I'm going to paint over that, each one, okay? I'm gonna paint over each one. And then I'll decide which colors I'm gonna keep. Okay, you can see that when I add water to this, it becomes a lot lighter. You'll be blending some of these too. Oops. Okay, wow. Like that one, I have too much water on my brush. I gotta kind of pull some of that back. See, I knew I was gonna mess that up. That's all right. Just don't want to get it into the purple. So it's best to blot your brush a little bit because I smudged that line. And clean your brush in between too, so you don't mix your colors. Blot a little, and then go ahead and paint it. So if you're following along with me, you should be testing your colors. And this was my mess up. Now, I'm one of these that I just like things just right, so that's gonna bug me. Otherwise, it would have been a nice sample. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and grab some. And every time, make sure you rinse your brush. Blot a little bit so you don't have a big pool of water like I had for this one. And that's a nice green. Look at that. Nice green. Everybody see that? Nice green. Okay. I'm going to do this one. And if you're just learning and you're not sure about your colors, you can make yourself a little sample like this of your colors and even write next to them what they are as you're testing them. So the next time you do something, you say, oh yeah, I like that color. What was that color called again? then you can go back to your sample. Okay. Doing pretty good now that I know not to put too much water. All right, blotting every time, cleaning every time. Going to the oranges. Okay, see. And I'm going fairly quickly. So if you're watching live and you're trying to catch up with me, I'll take a pause now and then. But, you know, when this is over, it will post to my page and you'll have access to it. I also started I started a YouTube channel a long time ago, but I really didn't have very many videos on it. I actually have a couple of process videos of my peep sculptures. So treat yourself if you've never seen that. The Carol Arts Center up in Westminster, Maryland, started a peep show, which is basically junk sculptures or dioramas covered in marshmallow peeps. And I think I've done 3 large submissions, for which my dragon won a few years ago. I had a 7.5 foot dragon with an 8 foot wingspan or so. And I did a rabbit from Alice in Wonderland the following year, and I placed. I didn't win first place. But I haven't done one since, and I'm kind of sad because I ended up getting ready to relocate and just didn't have time. Oops, smeared that one. Too much water. Like I said, thankfully, this is just a test. And so we'll do that one. And then last but not least, I'm not even gonna clean my brush for that because it's black. Everybody knows what black looks like, okay? So now when you do that, you'll get a better idea of what these colors really look like, and then I can decide which ones I wanna use, all right? So right off the bat, if I'm gonna go ahead and go with these colors, I'm definitely gonna need some of my pinks and my yellows. I'm setting this up for painting so you guys can see. See that? Yep. And there is the paper I'm going to be working on. And so if I'm just looking at this right now, I know from my pinks that the first one is probably too light. Actually, actually it's not. I don't know. It didn't really spread out very well, but I think I'm going to pass on that magenta. Okay, so I am going to use the second one. I like how that came out. And that is my dark pink. So I'm setting aside the ones I'm keeping, and then the others I'm going to put off to the side here. So I'm going to go ahead and use the carmine, although it's very similar to the other one, but I think I'm going to keep it anyway. And then if I want to do the rainbow flower, I'd probably go ahead and keep that purple. So I'm debating here. I'll keep it handy just in case because I really like that. And then I'll definitely want some red. And then for my greens, well, I'm definitely going to use the olive greens because those are really, both of them looked really nice. And then the dark green I think I'll just use to blend, and the yellow green. So I'm going to end up using all the greens. Now the 2 colors beside it, you know, I don't think I'm going to use the green. I don't need this green. So I'm going to skip this one, and I'm going to put that one aside. This one was the true green. I think I'm going to skip. So I'm going to keep the dark green. I'm going to keep 2 different olive greens because one's lighter than the other. And then for this, excuse me, light green, which was more of a blue green, if I'm doing the rainbow colors, then I would use that. So I'll keep it handy for now. And then deep vermilion, which is the reddish orange, I'm definitely going to use because it definitely will fit in there. The lighter orange, not really. So we're going to put that one aside. But the 2 yellows, actually I have 3 yellows. Or do I? This one was a Yeah, sunburst yellow, I like that. And I don't think I used it before, but I'm going to use it this time. And then I need a lighter yellow, so I'm going to do the lemon cadmium. And I think that should be fine for those two, so I'm going to go with those. And then we have ultramarine. I don't need for this one. Not sure I need it for the rainbow either, but I love that blue. Wish I could use it. I could use it for shading. Maybe I'll keep it handy, but not necessarily use it. We'll see. And then Spectrum Blue and these other two blues that I have here are in that rainbow flower. So I'm going to hold on to that. And then the purples, I'm going to hold on to those. And then the browns, all three browns, and the black. Okay, so now I narrowed it down to 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20 pencils, of which I will likely use a little bit of each, but there's probably going to be half of those that I use more often than not. All right, so we're going to put this aside. I'm still going to use this because I'm going to use it to test color before I do it, and maybe even to test blending colors. And then I'm also going to show you a little trick. If you're used to using regular watercolor pencils, not pencils. If you're used to using watercolor, then it's helpful to have the spare piece of paper because what we'll do is we'll kind of pool that color on another piece of paper and then steal from it to paint. And you'll see, I'll show you when we go to do it, okay? So the first thing I want to do is put a little bit of light color all over this design. So I'm going to start, strangely enough, with the browns, and I'm going to go with a light brown. So whatever your lightest brown is, I'm going to go ahead and grab that. I don't know if this one's as light as I'd like it to be, but I think it'll work. No, maybe not. I think I want kind of more of a yellowish brown, which is the one in the middle, I think. I'll test it again just to be sure. Yeah, that's the one. That's the one. So I'm going to use this raw, I'm going to use the raw umber. And then there are a couple of ways to work with watercolor pencils. One, you can treat this as an illustration with colored pencil. So if you've ever used colored pencil before, then you'll know how to use it. You can blend colors, you can lay down light color or darker color, but the more color you lay down, the deeper and richer that color is going to be. Okay, in this case, it's not that different than with colored pencil, except you're going to be adding water and it'll get very saturated and very dark. If you're going for a lighter color, then you want to go ahead and just kind of color it very lightly. So I'm going to go ahead and show you starting, let me make sure I'm in the screen because I've got comments that are over. Let me go to my thing. Okay, so I'm going to start down here and I'm going to go in the bulb, and even though these are the darkest areas in here, I'm going to go ahead and use the color all over because I'm going to end up going back over it where that shading is. So I'm just going to use a little tiny bit of light color all over. There's a highlight here on this side. You'll see it there. And I did not put the split in this like I have in the illustration here. I kind of forgot those lines, and those are kind of important lines. So if you want to create that line with a pencil, or if you want to use your watercolor pencil, I'm just going to kind of fill that. I'm just going to do a line to kind of end it. And then this section here comes down, gives it a little bit of space, and then comes down, okay? So I want to make sure I get that gap, because on this side, we're not going to color the whole thing. So I'm just going to color along the edges of this. And if your color's not perfect, don't worry, this is practice. You know, you may not have the right color or the same color that I used. But again, this is more common. This is a raw umber. So I'm sure you've seen that before. And then on the other side, I'm just going to go ahead and finish. I just wanted to show you where the split was because I didn't do that. And I know it's going to be dark in here, so if you want to fill it in a little darker, just a little bit, we'll spread that color out. And I'm going to come down here. And I didn't put all my roots in there yet, so we'll add that. Okay? And then I'm going to color lightly. Because that color is going to spread out. You know what I just realized? We are not using the same one. I transferred the wrong design. I wonder if you guys noticed when you were looking at this. That's funny. Oops. Well, that's okay. Because, let me see. We can use this. See, now I got to improvise here. I don't know how I did that. That's so funny. Yeah. You know what? It's the purple one that I transferred because I was using a black and white picture. So that's okay, because that purple is our backup. So let me move this back over here, and we can have some fun with this. I may do a combo in that case. So we'll go ahead and we'll do these, and then we'll do this. It may take a little bit longer, and that's part of the reason that I was going to demonstrate that one and not this one, but I just realized that we transferred the wrong one. Oops. Okay, I don't know how I did that. All right, so that's okay. So I'm going to go ahead and in that case move this over for now because we're working on this side, and I'm going to take this one and move it over here. And if you transferred the same one that I sent the stencil for, then this is the one, okay? So not to confuse you too much, but yeah, I just realized. Silly me. All right. That's what happens when you're cooped up inside the house, and then when you go to actually work, it feels weird. I don't know. Okay. All right. So I'm just kind of going along the outside, and then we're going to bring that color in. All right. So everybody did a little bit of light, but I was pointing out the wrong bulb. And so there really isn't a split in this one, which explains why I didn't do the line. So with that said, I've already drawn that in there. If you have an eraser, you can go ahead and erase that. Let me grab my eraser here real quick. And most of the time, you should be able to erase the color before you wet it. So unless you wet it, you won't be able to do it. So I'm gonna go ahead and just kind of erase this a little. I'm surprised I didn't catch that sooner. Just too excited to paint. Okay, so I erased a little. So the only difference is this one comes over, and then there's a little split, but there's not an opening. Okay, that's the only difference between those two in that respect. All right. And then the highlight is right here. So I'm going to leave a little space to make sure I don't fill it in. And then this side, you are going to end up doing the whole thing. Okay. All right, so if you got a little color filled in there, we're going to go ahead and test this out. So you're going to go ahead and take a brush, whichever brush you want to use. I tend to use the same brush a lot over and over. I said this one has a little point, so I'm going, all right, well, might as well use it for most of my work. All right, now you have a set. Oh, I have purple. Oh, good. Okay. So Laurie James is watching. Hi, Laurie. And Megan, you have a set of 4. Well, actually, I have a bunch of these. Not sure what you're referring to. If you're referring to that, yes, I will have plenty of variety if I ever want to have these printed and sell them or use them. Okay, so I'm gonna come in here and with not too much water. You saw how when we were testing the color, make sure your brush isn't drippy. You're gonna come in here and you're gonna start on the edge. Ooh, this is very orangey, okay? And if you have too much water on your brush, wipe your brush off. And then you can kind of bring this color out from the edge. Okay. It was darker in there anyway. Don't forget to leave your little highlight. And then on the other side. I don't even have to pick up more water. I had plenty of water on my brush. So give that a try. Okay. Now, much like with watercolor, you don't want to work it for too long because you will accidentally, the water sometimes will pull up the paper and make it kind of fuzzy, and you don't want that to happen. With watercolor, you need to let things dry and come back and add a coat. It's not that different from acrylic paint in that respect. Acrylic paint, you paint a layer, you come back, you can paint over it again, but you want it to dry first. So I just did a little bit. I'm not going to do any more in here, but when I have leftover color on my brush, for example, this is a good time that I can maybe create some of these root lines. And if you have a thinner brush, then you can come back and do that. I'm just using, because I have a nice point on here, I'm going to go ahead and use that and just create some of it. They're not very dark, they're just there. It's a line that's there. Can't really see it very well. Okay. There's also a little area down here that I didn't paint, which is part of it. So I'm going to take some of the color that's already there and just drag it down below. So now you'll see all that has color. Okay. And then we're going to leave it alone. We're going to come back to it. All right. You want to work in a different area so that you don't blend two colors that are side by side. If this is wet and you go and decide to paint in here, then there's a chance that that green and that brown are going to mix and you're going to get that smudge over. You don't want that, all right? So I'm sure there's another name for it. I just call it a smudge over. It just kind of bleeds, and then next thing you know, your colors are going across the lines. Okay, so I'm not going to work in this section. I'm going to come over here. And since we now have another tulip that I didn't even realize I had, we're going to go ahead and paint that. Now, if you liked the original design and you comment now or later that you really like the original design, I can make a photo of the stencil for that. And that way, this can be practice, and then you can go and create the other design at your own leisure. And then if you even want to re-watch my video, you can do that to kind of help you, okay? All right, so I'm going to start with my lightest color over here, which is going to be kind of that yellow green. As I'm going to come back with some of the other color, or, well, actually that's not true. Let's go with the light olive green. So if you have a light olive green, find that. I think this was the lighter one. I'm going to test it just in case. So this is part of the reason I do this, is so I can test colors. So you'll see, I just put my olive green on there. Yes, this is the lighter one. Okay? All right, that's the one I want to use. So put my brush away for a moment. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to go ahead and where you see that green on the sides, here on the left, and you see a little bit on the edge, that's where I'm going to put this color. So I'm going to kind of work quickly now. Here I forgot the rest of this leaf. So I'm going to go ahead and fill that in. When I do a contour drawing, if you leave a line missing, you can always come back and fill it in. And then this kind of completes here. So I'll go ahead and do that. Okay. And then up here, there's also this leaf folds over. So you're not seeing the complete line. So this actually comes up and goes to there. All right, so let me show you that in case you followed what I was doing. You'll see that. All right. All right. Okay, good. Yeah, I'll send you the other stencil, or I'll put it on my page. Sorry about that. Okay, let's go. So I'm going to go ahead and fill in a little color here. And like I said, it's on the left of this and up here, just a little bit. I don't want to do dark because I'm not going to get dark with this color. We can get darker later. Starting out light. There's no white in this, so you're just going to fill in along this side and around. And then a little bit here. And a little bit on the stem, just a little bit. And then all along the edges of these, I'm gonna go ahead and just a nice thin line here too. And then I'm gonna come up here. The nice thing about painting with me, and if you got to know me in person, I'm pretty easygoing, I think, for the most part, at least with my friends, not so much with my family. And so if you have questions, you know, at a later time, if there's something I don't cover, and you are welcome to send me a Facebook message. You can email me. My email is tutoringart@gmail.com. You can also, like the Facebook message, you can send a message through my website. There are many ways you can reach me. And obviously you can comment on the event page or below this video. And I may not respond immediately, but I will get back with you. Like right now, I know I'm getting some comments. I look periodically, but since I'm doing this, I can't respond as quickly. Okay, so I'm gonna put some color in here. Try and give you guys some time to catch up. And then that's good. Now, I just painted here, so I'm gonna kind of stay away from the bottom of this, but I'm gonna go ahead and outline the outside of this too with this color and paint a little bit more on the left, just a little. And then I'm gonna come up here. And if there's any confusion, what I was saying was I'm gonna go ahead and we're going to follow this side with the purple, and then we're gonna come over and do the other side. Even though it's this one, I'm gonna do these colors since I originally said I was gonna use these colors or something like that. So I'll skip the rainbow today. Now that'd be way too confusing if I try to do that. So I'm gonna go with this one, and then I'm gonna go with the colors of this one. Now they're in a different, they're in a different layout, but that's okay. I'll be able to show you how to fill that in. All right. So if you want, you can go ahead and fill in some of these leaves here. After all, we're using the same color across anyway, and you can come over here and do the same thing. I do a little bit of the outline, and then I'm going to come down the edge here, all the way to the bottom. Just kind of let it fade. Okay, I did forget a part of the leaf here. So we need to come here, start about there, and move down to here. And then this is the stem. And then I'm going to come here. So I'm just kind of lining the outside of this. It's a nice color for the edge. And it's nice and light to start. And then I'm going to put a little bit in the stems here and here. And then I'm going to come in and fill in some of the color. So just a little bit light, very light. And this has, you'll see some gosh, kind of grooves in the leaves, which is what's creating some of this color. So in here, I'm just going to go ahead and maybe do some of those lines. And then when we put some other color in there, you'll be able to, they won't look as much like just lines. All right, and here, same thing. So it's going to be darker in here, in this section. So we'll go ahead and start with some of that light olive green here. And then I'm going to do a few lines up in here. Okay. And so that way when we work on this greenery, we'll go ahead and start working on that greenery. All right, so that's the green. We're gonna pick up our brush and wet it. And I'm gonna go ahead and fill some of this in. So I'm not going to go too dark, but you'll see this yellow green looks like this olive. I add a little bit of yellow to it later, so I'm going to spread this out a little bit more. Start on the left, start where your color is the darkest, where you put in the most color, and then just drag it over a tiny bit. You can also follow along the edge, and make sure you don't have a lot of water on your brush. And you can use some of that color on the edge to bring it in. And come up here and do the same. Maybe leave a highlight just up here somewhere. And I'm gonna put some yellow in there. So I'm not going to go all the way over. I want that yellow to be really bright. And I'm going to fill this in. Hopefully you guys find this relaxing. It is for me. I know if you're learning, you're probably more worried about how it's going to turn out, but it doesn't matter. This is all about art therapy. Just enjoy it while you're in the moment. No one's necessarily watching you, and if they are, they're probably jealous if they're not doing it themselves. Ha. And you'll have plenty of time to practice and get better. So this is for fun and just to kind of learn how to use these pencils, okay? All right, so I see how I left some little highlight areas here because I want some of that yellow to pop, and some of them will actually end up being white. Hey, Barb. Barb's watching with me, and Karen is watching as well. Makes me happy when I see names I know. Makes me happy when I see names I don't know. Hopefully I'll get to know you because you'll keep watching my videos and you'll comment, and then I'll go, oh, I know that name. I know that person. And then I'm going to come in here and do the same thing. Everybody see that okay? I'm using the same water because I don't want to spread it out too much. Okay. We'll do the same thing on the other side. So if you're still working on this side, don't worry. We'll come back to it. Come over here. Especially along the edge. Now, I didn't have you put a lot there because if you're doing this for the first time, you know, it can get over saturated and get too dark too fast. So I just had you do the edge. Some of that edge color will bleed over, which is perfect, and that's what we're trying to do. You're just going to wet it with the brush and let it kind of come over. And these lines that we put in there, I want to leave them as lines. So when you go through here, try not to smudge them. Okay? Over here, I didn't really put too many lines. We'll come back to it, but here we did, so I'll follow them down. And then I'll just move some of the color from the side over here. We're working really light. This is practice. And then we'll get darker. And you can fill these in completely with just the color from the sides. Same thing here. Wet my brush. Kind of blot it a little, coming over. If you're filling a big area, having more water is okay. Like I'm going to be moving some of this, so I didn't blot as much. But it's those little areas you have to be careful with. We don't really have any white on this side, so I can just kind of keep going. But if you miss some spots, that's all right, because we're going to put much more color in this. And with watercolor pencil, the other thing is at the end, if there's some things you need to touch up and you don't really want to wet your paper, you don't have to wet the pencil at all. All right, so I'm going to show you guys what I've done so far. And let you catch up a little bit. If you decide that you don't want to change variety and you want to do the other color instead of the purple, what I'll do is maybe I'll demonstrate this one first to give you an idea of how these work. And then when I go to do this side, I'll do it in purple, but you have the option to use the colors you've already been using. Watching me. The video on my computer is delayed. So when I'm demonstrating here and I'm pointing things and all, I can't see those yet. I see them after, so it kind of makes me laugh. I'm taking a sip of water. And then hopefully you guys will be caught up. Okay. You want to check out your bulb and see if it's dry, and it probably is. So I'm going to pull out my darker brown, and I'm going to work with that. So if you want to find your dark brown, and I think this is my dark brown, so I'll test it. So I'm going to kind of just put a little bit of color here. Wet my brush. See, that's not as dark as I thought it was going to be. Of course, I'll get darker as I go. Now, if I press down, see the difference? Now I'm going to wet it. And now you'll have a lot darker. Okay? So this is right. I was just been going light, so I didn't have that hard touch on there. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and use this brown, so it's a darker brown. And I'm going to come in here and I'm going to look for where there's a shadow, where it's darker. And so that would be up here on the edge, on the left of the top of this bulb. And here as well at the top of this one. And along the edge. Remember what we said before, it was a little darker. And then I'm going to put some down here below and here. And I'm pressing down, but you don't want to go back and forth too many times if you're not going to be filling a big space. You'll have too much color to spread around. And then I'm going to put a little bit on the edge here. And I'm going to go into the roots and kind of draw those out a little. They're kind of little wavy roots. You can create as many as you want. Just the bottom of the bulb. Okay. There you go. And then because I have some in the middle there, and I actually think I used a little bit of gray in here, so I'm not going to use this color. We'll come back with either a gray or maybe a blue or something to do some color variation in there. All right, and I'm going to go a little darker over here, and then I'm going to go ahead and pick up my brush. Now you're going to see, we're testing in a small area, how you're going to layer. Make sure it's dry though, don't go over it. If it's still wet, then wait. And now I'm going to come back, make sure I don't have too much water on my brush, just kind of wipe it off. And I'll start out with just a little bit of water. And if I need more, I can go get it. And then I'm just going to kind of drag it out a tiny bit, just a little, not too much. I can come in a little from the bottom. And then on the top here, take your time. I'm blending in a little bit. So I've been teaching these classes for a very long time, but I usually teach them for fundraising programs, or this particular series I started for Horticultural Day at the Arboretum in Baltimore. And then I did a program there for Rawlings, and I've done also several garden clubs. So it's kind of a fun fundraiser. And so I usually set up registration, and people will pay, and they'll sign up for the class, and then they have a location and they come and they paint, and I typically provide all the materials. Okay. And so that's why I have a lot of varieties of this, because I've done them a few times. All right. Okay, let's see. We're gonna go ahead and before we do any more water, I'm gonna go ahead and do the these flowers. So we can, and then we'll come back and we'll start adding other colors. We still have about an hour, which is a fair amount of time. I'm gonna take probably my carmine, which was a really rich magenta. So it would be, I believe, and I'm going to test it just to be sure. I can't remember which one it was down here. So I'm going to do a light, and then I'm going to do a dark. So you can see I can use this for two ways. I don't have to change pencils right away. Now if I wet it, that's a nice color, isn't it? Really pretty. And then it gets even darker if I go stronger with the pencil. Okay? Now I'm going to demonstrate to you. I'm going to use this, and I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to, instead of drawing it first, I'm going to line this flower with what's on my brush. So this is what I was saying earlier. If you're used to working with watercolor and it feels weird to draw it first, you can use these like watercolor, but instead of using one of these little palettes with the wells, you just use your paper and you borrow from the paper, and then you come over. It's also a really good way to practice. And so I'm gonna move this over here and put this one back over here for now, in case you're still working on it, you can kind of see. And then I'm going to just use this as a guide for the colors. So I'm just gonna do the edge, borrow some of this color, and I didn't put a whole lot of color down, so I can do that. And I'm gonna do the same thing, let's see, along this edge. And up at the top. But I'm going lighter as I go. And here, and here. borrow some. So I just kind of outlined it. Then when I want to fill it in, I can just kind of start spreading that color. Maybe a little bit over here. And we'll do a center here. And I'll show you what I've done. Because we're going to use these lines that I just did right here and here. We're going to use to kind of spread out the color from the center. So you can go ahead and add those lines in. So really right now all I've done is outline this section. Okay. Trish. I love Trish. I thought you were working. You must have got off early today. Okay. Here we go. So I'm going to work from the center. So you can kind of see here how the colors kind of bleed out from the center for this one. But I'm using this design here. So I'm just looking at this and I'm going, okay, I need those lines. So I really need 2 lines in some cases. So I can either borrow from this color, although it's starting to dry, I'd have to get a little bit more. And I can create a second line here, and a second line here, and a second line here. Or I can draw, which I'm going to show you. So I'll leave my brush there. So I'm going to come in here, and I'm going by these colors, but I'm watching this carefully because it's in a different layout here. So I'm going to go ahead and just put a couple of lines over what I just did, because that's the other thing. If you're painting and it's still wet, you can draw on top of it. You just don't want to wet it again until it's completely dry. So on the side here, the lines are going to come out from the side. So you can do some practice lines. I'm kind of going by both pictures. Made it harder for myself, of course. And then we're going to go from this center line. I'm going to do a little bit of spreading. And also here. I did a lot of them on this purple one. You can kind of see the lines. And then on the center here, I'm kind of going by this a little bit because I kind of like how that turned out. So I have my 2 lines that I did really lightly. Now I'm going to fill them in a little darker. And then I'm going to bring some color. Now in this case, I want to smudge some of that color. So instead of doing harsh lines, I'm going to just kind of draw the color in a little. And I'm using the side of my pencil, if you guys can see that. Using the side, and I'm going to really oversaturate it down here because this petal is in front of this petal, so I want it to be a little bit darker. Okay, a little less up there. And then on the other side of this line, I probably should have given myself a little bit of distance then, but that's all right. I'm going to do it again, same thing. And I'm not going to go all the way to the edge because you'll be able to spread it as you go. And then let's see, where do we want to go with this? This actually line needs to finish. So we're going to put some extra saturated color right in here and let that kind of bleed out. See how I got a little darker in this little crease? And then I just bring it up. And same thing on the other side. I'm gonna get a little darker in here. And then I'm gonna bring some lines up to kind of spread it out. And I'm gonna go darker here. And there's supposed to be a line there. A little bit on that. And then some here that actually come from the side. All right, so kind of like if I was just drawing this, I'm just drawing it, but I'm gonna add water. So I don't wanna get too dark because all this is gonna spread out very quickly, okay? So I'm gonna demonstrate on this one and then we'll do that one. And then we'll come back and do this purple here. All right, so I'm gonna put my pencil down where I can see it. Take a sip of water so you guys can catch up with my lines a little. And now I'm gonna paint. This is my pencil. Kind of looks good when I look at all three together. All right, here we go. So I'm going to come down the edge here. Make sure that's originally dry because we did do some color there before. I've got too much water on my brush because I'm working little tiny areas. And I'm going to smudge it from the left. I'm going to, here, in the center part, I'm going to smudge from the right. So I'm just with a little bit of water, just a little bit, not too much water. Same thing on this side, I'm going to go to the right. And then here, following the line, from that left line, I'm going to smudge to the left. Very gently with some water. And then on the right, to the right, very gently with a little bit of water. Notice I haven't picked up any more water. I'm still painting. So I'm working with the same color, so I don't have to go back and get fresh water. I'm going to the left from the side here, from the bottom and up here, from the left here, from the right here, and then from the center, the bottom and up here. Let me put a division line there a little better. Okay, it's just a start. It's all you need for a start. Don't feel like you have to overwork it or you have to blend it completely out. We're gonna go going back and we're gonna be adding a little yellow and even a little bit of a dark red. So we have plenty of room to add more color, so you don't want to overwork it, okay? Now, if you've got a little bit of red on your brush, or if you want to pick up from your painting here, take some of that color and just run it down the right side of this right here. And if you don't have any, take the pencil and very gently put a little bit of red in there. Okay, and all the way up to the top a little. On this right side too, I want you to do the same thing. I want you to go up in the corner, draw like a triangle with the red, and then follow a line down. Make sure that this is dry, and if it is, then you can come back and fill that in a little tiny bit. This is going to create a shadow later with a little bit of red showing through. Looks kind of strange right now, but trust me, it'll turn out really nice. And then if you have some red still on your brush and you want to go ahead and outline this flower, kind of borrow from what you just did. Don't overwork those areas though. Okay, I don't have enough. So I'm going to clean my brush, and I'm gonna go ahead and start drawing on this side. So on this side, same thing. We're gonna do the same thing, but we're following the pattern. We're following these colors. We're following that pattern a little bit. So for on this side, on the left, I want you to start coloring this in. I'm gonna go on the edge. I had wet the edge so you can see it got really rich, which shows you another way. If it's wet, remember I said you can draw on it. And when you draw on it, it's gonna get richer and richer. So you don't have to lay down a bunch of color to start. And then I'm gonna go dark now. I just painted this. Even though we're putting red next to red, or magenta, I should say, next to magenta, I'm not gonna water this down yet. But I'm gonna go ahead and do those lines again. Kind of fuzzy lines from the left side. And you can get real rich and saturated down here. And then kind of come in from the side. And you can get really, really rich in the center, but or between these two. But we'll go ahead and we'll be adding more color there too, so you'll be able to tell that this one is in front of this one, okay? Same thing on the other side, you can outline. And I keep moving out of the screen a little, so I'm moving it a little bit more. That's why I watch myself. Let me see how I did that. So I think what I'm gonna do is just kind of smudge in some, color in here. Just kind of rub it in with that color. And then I'm gonna start my lines up here. Coming from the right. Go heavy line, heavy line. And you wanna create a little bit of a curve so it feels organic, not too straight. So it doesn't look like a comb, All the way to the top. And then I want to make sure that I leave some white in the center here. So we're gonna assume this is a line and that this is a line, and we're gonna work left of this one, and we're gonna work right of this one. This one, I think you can probably get away with just a little bit of light color. Let me look at that carefully. I'm trying to look at that. Yeah. Okay. So this is part of this flower. So these lines actually need to go up higher. That line and then that line. And you're putting nothing in between. This is actually a line and this is actually a line. All right, and then from the right here, although it's gonna end up filling in mostly, you can go ahead and just fill in most of that. Just once you turn this corner or this little area right here and you go up, you're gonna make it look like the lines again. All stemming from this line. And then on this side, you again can just kind of fill it in. Because you can't really see. When you get to the top, then you'll go ahead and branch out. Make sure you leave a nice space in between. Then at the top, I'm going to outline a little. We're going to work from the bottom. And come up And here, I'm gonna work from the bottom and go up. Okay, give you guys a moment to catch up. And then we're gonna wet that one. And if you need to use a smaller brush, if you're having problems like when you're wetting it with too much water or your lines are too big, you can change brushes. I'm just using the very tip of this brush when I paint. Okay. Being careful, this should be dry by now, but if it's not, double check. And then I'm gonna drag some of those lines in with the water. That looks really good. I like that. I like this color. Wet my brush. Come in here, because this I want dark. So I'm just kind of blotting it in there. But when I go up, and you can turn your paper if you need to, you want to pull these lines out at the top. Remember, I'm leaving a gap. And then I'm going to come here and I'm going to oversaturate this down here. Lots of that red. And I'm going to drag this line up, up, up. And then put a little edge at the top of this. And I have a little bit of water still here, so I'm going to go ahead and kind of flare this out in here. So I don't want to put too much. And then on the right side, let's see if I have enough water on my brush. Everybody see that okay? Yeah, looks like I still have enough water. Don't forget that roundness. A little bit on the edge there, and a little bit on the edge here. Okay, now this one got a lot darker than this one, so if you want to borrow some of this color and come over to this one, you can kind of start filling this a little bit more. You'll see it'll get darker the second time you do it. And the beauty is when I wet this and it's still not dark enough, I can come in and I can put some of that color in there, and you see how it gets darker. I didn't have a lot of water in there. Thought I did. So I can wet the paper first. Same thing on the left side. If it's wet, you can go in there. And so if I want to wet, I don't want to wet this yet because I just did it. But like up in here, I'll wet it briefly, wet it in here. And then I'll come in and put my lines. All right. And we're going to come back and do some yellow, but we're going to wait. If you put some now, you would actually get a little bit of blending to form that orange, but we're going to work that out later, so we're not going to do it right now. So I'm using, again, for anyone that came in late, the transfer that I had on my event page evidently was incorrect. I guess I transferred this one. It was black and white when I did it, so I got confused. Should have double checked. Anyway, so we're kind of working and combining this and to create this. So we're going to have this side be these colors and this side be these colors. And it'll be interesting. Okay? All right, so now we're gonna go on to the left and we're gonna work a little bit. Now I kind of like the fact that I added some red in here, and so I'm gonna steal some red and I'm gonna put some red up in here. And if it's not wet enough, which it wasn't, I'm gonna take my brush, my pencil, and I'm gonna put some red in this. Kind of like that as the shadow. Let me fill some more here. Fill some more here. That'll kind of bring them together. I'm using the same leaf color, so I'm not going with these colors at all on the green. I'm going with these colors for the green. So you do want some consistency if it's on the same card or in the same painting, kind of like that. Okay? All right. Okay, so here we're going to do purple. So if you already do the red and you're going to continue to do red and you don't want to do the purple, then just follow along. Even with the purple, substitute the red. Okay? I'm going to go ahead and find my purple that I'm going to use, which I think I'm going to use the medium to start, and then I'll get a little darker. And so I'm working with, this is the one that was nameless. It's this color here, okay? If you're gonna do the purple. So kind of a light purple to start. All right, so I'm gonna come in here, and this is gonna be easy enough to follow because this one, already done. And if you're going off on your own, remember I sent those photo references. So if you are still on the fence and you wanna add some additional color, the photo references I sent were not even these particular ones, but they were this variety called the parrot tulip, and there was a rainbow one that's really stunning. So if you're not doing it this time around, I suggest maybe you try it another time. It's really pretty, and it's not hard to find botanical references. I mean, you can find a million different tulips. Well, I won't say a million, but you can find probably a million different photos of tulips. And then if you're trying to determine, how do I make this look like a botanical illustration? What makes it a botanical illustration is that it breaks down the tulip. So this is the better example, which is again the reason I had originally planned to do this one, because this one you would assume that this is what's underground, right? And then this tulip would finish this off, would come up here. Okay, so it's a cross set. It's like you cut it in half. And so if you wanted to work from real life and you didn't mind pulling one of your blooming tulips out of the ground, then you could actually cut that somewhere in the middle or further down, and then illustrate one side here, the bottom side, and then the top side here. And then you're working from real life. But for examples on tulip bulbs, again, Google search tulip bulbs, and you're gonna find so many different versions. So what I have done in each of my illustrations is I try not to copy exactly what other people have done, and there's a ton of botanical illustrations, is I kind of use random pieces. So I say, okay, I like the way this bulb looks, but I'm gonna change this a little bit, and I'm gonna have it go with this particular tulip. Now, this tulip does go with this bulb, but if you're just kind of doing this for practice, it doesn't have to be exact. I think with your botanical illustrations, they try to be, because that's the whole point. You're teaching someone something. This is more or less what the bulb's gonna look like for this particular tulip. And there's all kinds of flowers out there. It isn't just tulips that you have to do. Like I said, I looked up the one for a poinsettia, and you can see how that's going to be basically just a root. It really doesn't have a bulb. All right, so there's a lot of varieties out there. Okay, Going back to here, I'm gonna do the purple. So I'm gonna do the same thing I was doing with this, but I'm gonna do it with the purple color. So I'm gonna come up the side. I'm gonna work a little quicker this time for the sake of time. You guys are getting the hang of it, I'm sure, by now. I'm gonna saturate this a lot, and then I'm gonna start creating those lines. Maybe saturate a little extra there. And I'm gonna do the other side. I just really like drawing. So when I do watercolor, I almost always use watercolor pencils. We're gonna put some of that red violet in there, or that magenta in here too, if you're doing the purple. But if you're just doing the red, you'll do the red, you'll do the purple, you'll do, you'll do the red, and then when I come back to do the magenta, you're gonna substitute and do some yellow. I think I'm a little tired today. Problem with live videos, there's no edit. So if I say something silly, if I put my foot in my mouth, you hear all of it. And it looks like I forgot a little section up here. So that was the back. So I'm gonna come up here and kind of do like the top of a heart, because that's the front petal. And then I'm gonna do a line down the center here, and another line maybe below sided, even though that's not how it looks in this. I'm gonna do it anyway, and I'm gonna oversaturate to the left and to the right, because it looks like when it splits up, it just splits up here. Okay. Leave myself some room for magenta. All right. And much like we did with this, we're going to start out with the water before we add any other color. We're going to let it dry. We'll come back. We'll add the other color. So I'm going to go quick. And if you get behind, this will be over in the next half hour, and you can rewind or fast forward, I should say, on the recorded video and watch the rest and finish. All right, back here there's not much color. I guess it's primarily white up there. All right. Okay. I'm going to work on the greenery a little bit, and then I'm going to go right back to the flowers. So now I had some of my light color, so now I want to add some dark, and then we'll finish it off with some yellow. So I'm going to take my dark green now, and my dark olive green. And I'm going to come in here, and I had used some red in there, but I'm going to put this dark green over it a little bit, just a little bit of it. And I'm going to follow this left line and go right over the color that I had already done. And I'm going to do the same thing on here. Looks like it's going to break. So if it breaks, I'll go back and fix that. Okay, now I'm going to exaggerate these lines. Remember, I said I was going to put lines in here. This time I'm pressing down because I want them to be dark. And I'm going to put some of those lines there. And I'm going to go much darker here. Same thing here. Now we're probably going to still have to go back and do some dark green or a darker green. I'll probably mix the two because I like this olive. So I'm filling in this side, And then I'm going to put a couple of lines here, which I'm just going to keep as lines. And same here. I'm going to kind of follow the edge, maybe even down here. And I'm going to put a couple of lines. And maybe follow this edge here. I don't want to do too much on this edge. You can put a little bit of the darker, but I don't want to turn into a line. And I think that's pretty good. And then just put some of that darker green here. Darker olive green. In here, I'm going to put some darker here. And on the left side, just the left side, I'm going to fill in some. Leave a little bit of a highlight area. Come up the right. Do a little bit of the outside. In here, same thing. Left side is where I've got my darker. And along the edge, and then here, left side. Being consistent. So, kind of show you guys. All right, and then on the other side, same thing. We're following these leaves. So I'm gonna go really dark in here. And I'm gonna create some line right over those lines that I had done before. And along the edge. And then on the edge here. A little bit right here in between, and then on the edge here, and on the other side right over the red a little bit. Put some of that green, darker green, edge here and to the left, right over the red a little bit. And then last but not least on this one, we're gonna put it on that little bit on the edge here. A little bit on the edge here. We're gonna drag some of this color in and along the edge. And then we're gonna put some lines. Okay, so it looks something like that. So we got a little darker. And we haven't done the water yet, so we're gonna do that next. Okay. All right, I'm gonna come back, and since I worked on this last, I'm gonna work back over here, and I'm gonna wet this. See, it's gonna get a little darker. It's still not dark enough. I wanna mix some dark green in here. So if you have a dark green pencil ready, while it's wet, I will pick up my dark green. Let's see, where is my dark green? Right here, dark green. And I'm gonna, while it's wet, I'm gonna go ahead and, this really looks more of a kind of grass green, but that's okay. It helps a little bit. And because there's some lines in this too, I'm just gonna let it bleed out a little bit. Probably need to use a little gray to darken that up a little. And then I just left my brush with a little bit of the dark, and I'm spreading some of that olive green around. Yep, see, testing your colors is important. Because this really looks more like a grass green. I needed more, even more of the dark olive, which I can come back and add once this is dry. Or maybe when I put the olive over that darker, that'll look nice. Come in here and wet it. Come in here and wet this, spread it out. Now we're just on the left. You want to spread most of it on the left. If you have some white spaces, you can spread some of it out all over. With the darker color I want on the edge. And I want to put some dark in here. So I'm going to use the olive though. I'm not going to use this green now that I've discovered I don't like that green as much. Not the end of the world. It wasn't really wet. I have to wet it first. Okay, see how I have a little bit of a darker area now? So it looks like a little shadow. And we'll get darker than that. Really needed a deep, dark green for this. Okay, wet my brush, come over here, move some of this around. I'm still using the same water. I'm going to leave a lot of the dark on the edge anyway. Okay. So I wonder if I use my dark green that I decided is too green, and now I've misplaced, here it is. If I put that with my red, yeah, actually, if I mix it with my red, it gives me a nice dark color too. So I just put a little bit right over that red. Not too much because we just painted that, okay? Don't wet it too much. But now I have a nice dark shadow there. So that could work really well. If I didn't want to have to find my dark green, I can go ahead and use this magenta. Remember I told you I was gonna end up using a lot less pencils than I had sitting here. I've already used the magenta more than anything because I can get darker or lighter. But I kind of like that. So maybe where I need it to be really, really dark, I just put a little bit of red in here and here. I'm just doing the pencil because we just wet this, so I'm not gonna wet it yet. I'm just gonna put it in the areas that I wanna go darker. This is just an alternative, rather than having to find a dark green. Okay, so here as well. And this is a little too wet, so I'm gonna wait on that. I don't wanna mess that up. Maybe a little here, and maybe a little here. Then I'll come back with the green, the dark green, and go right over those areas that I just did. And wow, does it make a difference? It makes it darker, much darker. So if you mix complementary colors, so red and green being a complementary colors, you usually end up with a darker color, sometimes a brown. In this case, it's showing up as a darker green, which is perfect. I still don't want to touch that, too wet. Okay? All right. We're gonna go back to the tulips. We're gonna go to the right side. We're gonna put a little bit of yellow in there, and then we're gonna end up with our richest colors at the end. So the yellow should be easy. You can pick your either lemon yellow or a lighter, the colors I had were, what is this? Sunburst yellow, and then I had a lemon cadmium. And in the areas where I have the yellow, which I don't have a lot over here, I have more over here. So you can see here, I'm gonna put a little bit of yellow. It sort of serves as my highlight instead of and so again, if you guys want to do one or the other as practice, I already have the stencil for that on the discussion section of the event page. So like if you click on the event for today, not on the video, click on the event for today, then you'll see there are some, there's a picture of this, and there is a, what looks like, well, I don't have it anymore, but you'll see it's just kind of a contour drawing of this one. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go back to the event page and I'm gonna add a contour drawing for this one, for those of you that wanna practice again, either later today or come back and watch my video or even just do it on your own. You'll have both, okay? So I got some yellow here and I'm gonna put some yellow here. And I'm going a little brighter than I did the last time. I have this the cadmium, lemon cadmium that I can also fill in some places if I want. Maybe highlight in some other places. Maybe really highlight up there. Maybe out here where I left some of the lighter areas. I'll kind of fill that in. And then I definitely need it up in here. I'm going to use the cadmium yellow up in here. All along the edge, because this isn't a white and this is not a white and red flower. This is a yellow and red flower. And there'll be some orange tones which we'll come back and we'll add. So I'm just filling in some yellow. Everywhere I see white. Everywhere I see white, up here too. Okay, you can even put some in between those lines. We don't want white. In between the lines. And up in here. When I do the transfers, I usually go lighter than I did, just FYI. So I don't know how dark you guys got with your transfers because I don't like having pencil line. Now, if I have pencil line, the option is, like I showed you with a couple of examples early on, is you can go back over it with a micron pen. But if you don't want the pencil lines and you're gonna have to draw really, really light, or once you do your transfer, go in there very gently with an eraser and lighten up those lines. Okay, because right now this is really bothering me, so I may end up putting some red in there. All right, and then we're gonna get a little darker with this. Everything dark we're gonna come back to. And so we have one more round. So for right now, for your yellow, check where you've painted. Make sure you're not painting in anything that's too wet. I was waiting on this because I really, really wet that way more than I needed to. So I do not want to paint over there. So I'm gonna come over here and I'm gonna go ahead and kind of wet this yellow. You don't have to wet it too much because you don't even have to wet it at all if you don't want, but I want some of the yellow to blend with the greens. And be careful where you may have just painted your dark color because it looks like I'm still wet there, so I don't want to mess up my paper. So I'm being gentle. So anywhere you've painted the dark, avoid that. And if you still have yellow on your brush and you want to transfer it somewhere else, that's also a way to do it. Looks like I need a little bit more olive green in here on the right side of this. And since I just wet it, I'm just going to kind of brush it in a little. So I'm kind of painting with my pencil. Okay, anywhere else I feel like I need more olive green while it's wet, I can paint with my pencil. Then you can darken up some of your lines if you want. Maybe go back over the area that was wet here. And here. And here. Where it was dark green. And here where I didn't like that grass green. See, when I blend it in with this, it's a little better. A little bit better. Okay. Let's put, instead of using, if you have a gray pencil, find a gray pencil. If not, I'm going to use the darker brown again. Even though, like I said, gray would probably be a better. Oops, I had one more color of this brown. Let me see. Let me try this medium brown. I don't think I've used that yet. And in here, kind of a rough little dark spot. I'm just going to color that in. You don't even have to wet it if you don't want, but I'm going to put some little dark spots in here. And gray would be perfect. I just don't want to search for my gray right now. See how I roughed it up a little bit? I want it to look kind of organic. I don't want it to look real smooth. And then when you wet it very gently. I have a little highlight here, but maybe it's a little too much highlight, so I'll kind of smudge this a little. So it looks dirty. I want it to look dirty. And if you want to go over any of your lines, you can borrow. I also want it darker up in here. So I went ahead and, while it's wet, I went ahead and did that. You can also use a little brown for your shading. So if you want to come in here, add a little bit of brown on the left. You don't even have to wet it because it's still wet probably from a few minutes ago. But it'll give me another color. They're starting to look a little more like those leaves, right? Maybe I'll wet that. Yeah, I didn't like that much. Put the green down there. And maybe even the red. Where's my red? There's a different red. No, it's the right red. Not showing up though. Okay. And then where's that dark green I had? Right here. So that's the very bottom. I want it to be darker. Okay. All right. So now we got to finish up the tulips. And then any touch up you want to do, you'll be able to do. And then I always sign my paintings. I didn't show you the background, so I'll demonstrate that a little. We've got about 9 minutes left. So I'm going to show you on the purple. I'm going to use my, what did I use? I have another magenta, but it's kind of a red violet. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to do the same thing I did initially, right over the dark area. And then I'm just going to drag a little bit into the center. Same thing on the left. Any kind of red violet will do as well. And then really dark in the center here. And up at the top. And then you can come back if you have a dark purple, which I had. I thought I had a dark purple. Yeah, dark violet. I would go really dark, and you can. I'm doing this at the same time to save time. You can do this in different steps. Just along the edge here and here, and then inside here and inside here. So you can see that it's the inside. I'm getting darker, okay? Then very gently with some water, a little darker down here. Okay, they're gonna blend a little, so I'm gonna start at the top here and let it just kind of mix. Very gentle. I put a lot of water in here, more than I should have. So I'm gonna dry my brush a little. Come back to the other side. You're going to see it's going to get a lot richer. So you can come back and do a third coat if you wish, and blend colors by putting the two like I just showed you, or just one of the individual. A little color up in there. That's kind of pretty. But what I didn't do is those definitive lines. So I'll steal from this color right here because I have so much of it. I can steal from it and just kind of put some lines up there. So that's the purple. And now I'm going to go to the right side. Clean my brush really well because I didn't have purple on that side. And I'm going to go ahead and, oh wait, no, not yet. We want to do the darker red. So find a darker red, just a solid red, or another layer of that magenta. Probably an auburn kind of would have been a nice color to use, but I'm just going to use this crimson red. And I added the yellow already. I'm going to dabble a little deep, oops, that happens. A little deep red on the edge. You can hear that. We live near a military base, and we have these crazy flyovers. It's always towards the center or on the edge that you're going to want to put the darker color. So here and here and here and here. And like I said, we're getting close to the end of the video, so if you're not caught up with me, you'll have an opportunity to restart, fast forward, whatever you need to do once I save this to my page. So don't feel like you have to rush right now. You can come back to it. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing here, really rich. Really rich. Definitely on the left side here, because it's in back of this tulip. Here, and here, and here. Okay, and then if you also wanted to blend a little orange in there, you can take some orange and throw some in the middle so that when you go ahead and wet this, you'll get some orange tones. So I'm just randomly throwing some orange here and there in the red. Okay? And you almost don't even have to paint it with water, but I kind of like it to be richer. So I'm going to go ahead, but watch your water in this case so you don't cover up all your yellow areas. Watch your water. Make sure you don't put too much. See how much richer it's going to get? So be careful with that. Less water's better when you're trying to work in a controlled area. And I'm going to come in here. Notice I didn't pick up any more water. Working with the same color anyway, doesn't matter. And then if I want to exaggerate lines, I can drag some lines out with the color that's already here. You don't have to pick up anything new. So we're starting to wrap up. I'm going to do some of these lines, the color. You can come back and add anything you want to it. Get a little darker. Now you guys have the hang of it, right? So I encourage you to practice if you like the watercolor pencils. Just have some fun with it. Doing the 3 different ways I showed you where you can create yourself a little, almost like a well by using an extra sheet of watercolor paper and forming the color there, and then just taking some of that color. You can borrow from existing color. You can draw and then paint it with water, or you can go and paint on top of the wet already. Okay? If you're doing a background, if you want to add a background to this, I definitely have one on the back of this. I did not have one on the back of this, which is the one I was originally going to demonstrate. Then what I would suggest is you take a big flat brush, pick out a nice complementary color. Maybe in this case, a light yellow wash with a little brown down here, kind of like this one might work. You could go with another green. I could use this aqua blue, which actually is kind of fun. You can also, I forgot to show you, you can wet the end of your watercolor pencil and spread it out really easily. And then when you fill out the area, you have a lot of color there already. See, and I don't have those lines. So make sure that when you're doing a background, you do not do it this way. Like, you know, some people go, well, you know, I can just do this really fast, kind of like colored pencil. This is where it varies. This might work out, but sometimes you'll end up with some of those lines. See how you can sort of see the lines? Otherwise you tear up your paper. So your best bet is to use the side of your pencil. Well, it's not a good example, it's wet there. The side of your pencil, and go ahead and create that area. You can also do what I suggested, where you borrow from Peter to pay Paul. So I'm going to borrow this color and bring it over here and fill out this section. Borrow it, fill out this section. You could kind of do some layering where you could go back and make an interesting, I wish I had that sample with me. I don't have it over here handy. I had it earlier of when I did a wine demonstration, and I just kind of let that dry, and then I came back and I did another coat, and it creates this really nice like wash, and then you could even do some splashes of paint, you know, later, you know, just kind of splash it on there. There's all kinds of things you can do, just like with any watercolor paint, but in this case you're just using the pencils. Okay, so I'm not going to do a background here because I just painted a lot of the edges here, and I don't want to obviously smear anything or smudge it or blend it, or I don't want it to bleed. All right, so this is my final. It's kind of a combination between these two. Haha. It's like this one and this one got married and it had a baby. So there you have it. There's my demonstration. It is 4:01, so we're running a little bit behind. But I wanted to thank you guys for joining in and for painting with me. And if you haven't watched this yet and you're watching it later, still feel free to comment if you have any questions. Also, if you finish your piece and you really like it, even if you don't really like it and you want to share it with me, feel free to post a picture on the event page. I don't think you can post it in the comments of the video, but you could also send it to me in a message. And I've always had some folks do that with me already, and I haven't posted them yet. I'm going to do a nice collage of student illustrations and paintings probably at the end of this week. That kind of sums up all the sessions that I've done so far. We have a Wednesday session and we have a Friday session. Wednesday we're painting tote bags, and Friday we're going to work with chalk pastel. So please check out the events on my page. Thank you so much again for joining me, and have a wonderful rest of the day. Bye-bye.